Today we will look at the Harrier AV-8B and the Harrier II. There are currently 7 Harrier models available for FSX, P3D and X-Plane 11, and we will look at the 4 best examples. This list shows the rankings and when they were created. Understandably, the oldest is the worst. The X-Plane 11 offering by X-Trident is simply outstanding. Read the review highlighted in red. The Sim Skunk Works offering for FSX and P3D is very good. The RazBam offerings are 6 years old and the flight model is a little bit quirky, but it is a good value purchase and looks very good. The UKMIL Freeware package is quirky but reasonable. The X-Plane 11 Freeware offering has been upgraded and is quite good. The Wilco Payware version is overpriced and quirky. And the AP Design Freeware version is 16 years old and shows its age. The Harrier is a family of jet-powered attack aircraft capable of vertical or short takeoff and landing operations. Named after a bird of prey, it was originally developed by British manufacturer Hawker Siddeley in the 1960s. The Harrier emerged as the only truly successful Vistol design of the many attempted during that era, despite being a subsonic aircraft, unlike most of its competitors. It was conceived to operate from improvised bases, such as car parks or forest clearings, without requiring large and vulnerable air bases. Later, the design was adapted for use from aircraft carriers. There are 2 generations and 4 main variants of the Harrier family, developed by both the UK and United States manufacturers. Firstly, the Hawker Siddeley Harrier. Secondly, the British Aerospace Sea Harrier. Thirdly, the McDonnell Douglas AV-8B Harrier II. And fourthly, the British Aerospace Harrier II. The Hawker Siddeley Harrier is the first generation version and is also known as the AV-8A Harrier. It was used by multiple air forces, including the Royal Air Force and the United States Marine Corps. The Sea Harrier is a naval strike air defence fighter derived from the Hawker Siddeley Harrier. It was operated by both the Royal Navy and the Indian Navy. During the 1980s, a second generation Harrier emerged, manufactured in the United States as the AV-8B and in Britain as the British Aerospace Harrier II. By the start of the 21st century, the majority of the first generation Harriers had been withdrawn, many operators having chosen to procure the second generation as a replacement. In the long term, several operators have announced their intention to supplement or replace their Harrier fleets with the ST-OVL variant of the F-35 Lightning II, designated as the F-35B. The Hawker Siddeley Harrier GR1, GR3 and the AV-8A Harrier were the first generation of the Harrier series, the first operational close support and reconnaissance attack aircraft with vertical, short takeoff and landing. These were developed directly from the Hawker P1127 prototype and the Kestrel evaluation aircraft. On the 18th of April 1969, the Harrier GR1 officially entered service with the RAF when the Harrier conversion unit at RAF Wittering received its first aircraft. The United States Marine Corps also chose to procure the type, receiving 102 AV-8A and 8 AV-8A Harriers between 1971 and 1976. The British Aerospace Sea Harrier is a naval VSTOL jet fighter, reconnaissance and attack aircraft. It was a navalised development of the Hawker Siddeley Harrier. The first version entered service with the Royal Navy's Fleet Air Arm in April 1980, and the Sea Harrier FRS-1, as it became known, was informally known as the SHAR, the Shah. Sea Harriers played a high-profile role in the Falklands War of 1982, flying from the aircraft carriers HMS Invincible and HMS Hermes. Here we see the Sikorsky S-55 helicopter, modelled by MP Design. During their training, Harrier pilots were required to undertake several hours of helicopter flight in order to get them familiar with the sensations of vertical landings. The Microsoft Flight Simulator code does not cater for fixed-wing aircraft landing vertically, so each Harrier developer has to create their own special code. This is why each Harrier model handles quite differently. The Harrier has been described by pilots as unforgiving to fly. The aircraft is capable of both forward flight as well as vertical takeoff and landing and short takeoff and landing manoeuvres, requiring skills and technical knowledge usually associated with helicopters. Most services demand great aptitude and extensive training for Harrier pilots, as well as experience in piloting both types of aircraft. Trainee pilots are often drawn from highly experienced and skilled helicopter pilots. In addition to normal flight controls, the Harrier has a lever for controlling the direction of the 4 vectoring nozzles. It is viewed by senior RAF officers as a significant design success, that to enable and control the aircraft's vertical flight required only a single lever added in the cockpit. For horizontal flight, the nozzles are directed rearwards by shifting the lever to the forward position. For short or vertical takeoffs and landings, the lever is pulled back to point the nozzles downwards. As early as 1973, Hawker Siddeley and American aviation manufacturer McDonnell Douglas were jointly working on the development of a more capable version of the Harrier. Early efforts concentrated on the development of an improved Pegasus engine, designated the Pegasus 15, which was being tested by Bristol Siddeley. During August 1981, the program received a boost when British Aerospace and McDonnell Douglas signed a Memorandum of Understanding marking the UK's re-entry into the program. The Harrier was extensively redeveloped by McDonnell Douglas and later joined by BAE, now parts of Boeing and BAE Systems respectively, leading to the family of second-generation VSTOL jet multi-role aircraft. The American designation for this was the AV-8B Harrier II. On 12 December 1983, the first production AV-8B was delivered to the US Marine Corps. The AV-8B is primarily used for attack or multi-role tasks. The Harrier jump jet, capable of taking off vertically, can only do so at less than its maximum loaded weight. In most cases, a short takeoff is performed using forward speed to achieve aerodynamic lift, which uses fuel more economically than a vertical takeoff. On aircraft carriers, a ski jump ramp is employed at the bow of the carrier to assist the aircraft in becoming airborne. Landings are typically performed very differently. Although a conventional landing is possible, the range of speeds at which this can be done is narrow due to relatively vulnerable outrigger undercarriage. Operationally, a near vertical landing with some forward speed is preferred. Rotating the vectored thrust nozzles into a forward-facing position during normal flight is called vectoring in forward flight, or VIFing. This is a dogfight tactic allowing for more sudden braking and higher turn rates. Braking could cause a chasing aircraft to overshoot and present itself as a target for the Harrier it was chasing, a combat technique formally developed by the US Marine Corps for the Harrier in the early 1970s. The wind direction is a critical factor in VTOL maneuvers. The procedure for vertical takeoff involves facing the aircraft into the wind. The thrust vector is set to 90 degrees and the throttle is brought up to maximum, at which point the aircraft leaves the ground. The throttle is trimmed until a hover state is achieved at the desired altitude. The short takeoff procedure involves proceeding with normal takeoff and then applying a thrust vector at a runway speed below normal takeoff speed. Usually the point of application is around 65 knots. For lower takeoff speeds, the thrust vector is greater. The reaction control system involves thrusters at key points in the aircraft's fuselage and nose, also the wingtips. Thrust from the engine can be temporarily siphoned to control and correct the aircraft's pitch and roll during vertical flight. In terms of a replacement for the Harrier, as of June 2015, the STOL variant of the F-35 Lightning, formerly the Joint Strike Fighter, designated as the F-35B, is intended to replace the AV-8B Harrier II in service with the US Marine Corps, while the RAF and Royal Navy are scheduled to introduce the F-35B in 2016 with their first F-35 unit 617 Squadron in the Italian Navy in 2018-2019. During 2010, it was announced that the RAF and Royal Navy would retire their remaining Harriers by 2011. In December 2010, the RAF's Harrier GR9s made their last operational flights. In June 2011, the MOD denied press reports that the aircraft were to be sold to the US Marine Corps for spares to support their AV-8B fleet. However, at the end of November 2011, the Defence Minister, Peter Luff, announced the sale of the final 72 Harriers to the US Marine Corps. As many as possible of the 72 Harrier GR9s will be converted to match AV-8B night attack configuration to augment the total AV-8B end strength. This will allow the US Marine Corps to retire some high flight hour FA-18D aircraft, while the remaining aircraft will be used as spare parts sources for the airworthy fleet. Hope you enjoyed that. The URLs for all the models shown are given in the show notes below.